So this is chapter 8, Wasteland. The Iku took me up over the bald where the wall stood, then down into the valley below. From time to time, he looked back nervously, asking me if I was sure I knew what I was doing. I told him I would be okay, that the world outside of Zebra Nation was not all bad. Of course, I didn't know if that was true, but I tried to pretend I believed it. As we crested over another hill, I got my first glance at the grandest vista I had ever seen in my life. I had lived all of my life in the forest and in the mountains. I had never before seen such an amazing, nearly empty expanse of land, flat and stretching as far as the eye could see in all directions. There was only a small sliver of sunlight on the horizon, and I could tell by the Iku's squawks that his inner chatter that he wanted to stop and rest and maybe go back home to the living forest that he had known for so long. I patted him on his side, and he took us both to a small crop of rocks that would offer us shelter. I scrounged for some grass and laid it down for the two of us. I then listened to the land and heard very little noise, no chatter. Only the song of a few insects and some music from half-asleep plants. It seemed unusual, but at least it was safe, and besides, I was too tired to worry about what everything meant. I would figure it all out tomorrow. I fell asleep with the Iku by my side, but even with the Iku there and freed from the Queen's grasp, I was wide awake when the full moon rose not long after. It was going to take my nervous system time to fully calm down. I think I half expected some sentries or the Queen herself to come chasing me at any moment. I dozed on and off. I tried to tell myself not to worry, that the quiet was perfectly normal, that I was safe, that I knew what I was doing. But something gnawing in my gut, some vestigial, primordial energy, would not let me sleep. And so I sat by and rested next to the Iku until morning. The Iku took me a bit further to some mesas that would have taken me another day to walk to. However, there he stopped, and I knew why. The Iku bowed to me and said he could go no further from his family. I bowed back and thanked him for taking me as far as he did. I then started walking. I looked back. He looked at me worried. "I will be fine," I told him and waved. "Get back to your family." He bowed again, then bounded off. I started walking. There were plants here and there, which they themselves informed me that the people there called them cactus and sagebrush. This was quite a lot different than the forest. Once again, very quiet and solitary. When I bent to talk to one of the many cacti, they started talking, and it took me a second to realize that they were speaking a completely different language than the plants in the forest. I was able to get a bit of advice from them about where to find water, but that probably cost me half the morning. I walked and walked. There were roads of stone that seemed to be built some time ago, but were now in utter decay. I figured that following them was my best shot at finding more people. Even if it wasn't, I just kept walking. I followed the road and walked as far as I could until sunset, only stopping to find water or rest in the shade, and only seeing more of the same empty landscape before I decided to sleep for the night. As a child, I spent many nights carelessly under the stars. I couldn't even get to sleep back then due to the incessant chatter and singing of insects and a wind in the living forest that always started around midnight, a cold, damp wind that sounded like a howler monkey. But here, because it was so quiet, I felt equally uneasy, although I told myself repeatedly, my mother believed in this place, and so it must have value. I walked again the next day, continued on that road, the road that seemed to stretch on forever. The land of Zebra Nation could be traversed in one long day from the marshes over the mountains and into the forest and east to the desert. But after 3 days, I seemed to have made almost no progress in this new land. I met my first burrow rat on the fourth day, but he wanted nothing to do with me. My thoughts drifted under the hot desert sun, and I let out a call for help, mimicking the call of a loud elk moose, a call that back home would have had the entire neighborhood at my door in moments. Nothing, no response. I sighed. Maybe the queen was right, a voice said. I stopped, not knowing where the voice was coming from. Then I realized it was me. I had to get a hold of myself or I would die out here, and I had to find some better shelter and some food if I was going to have any chance of survival. You're going to die, the voice said. Maybe so, I countered back, but at least I tried. You should give up, the voice said. I sat under a large bush, and told the voice to be quiet. It laughed. I kept walking out of spite, anger. That's when I noticed something different in the landscape. Little rods emerging from the ground and huge gray boxes littered here and there in the desert. I had no idea what they were, but at least I was making progress, it seemed. I walked a little faster, putting my ear closer to the ground to listen. I heard a sort of empty white noise, but nothing living. Still, it gave me hope, and I walked even faster. I came upon one of the gray boxes and decided to look closer. Upon closer inspection, it seemed to be a shelter of some kind. I called inside. Hello, but there was no response. I listened even more closely, but inside of the box, the sound of nature was even deader. I walked in. It was quite an interesting house, if it was a house. Perfectly straight walls with little boxes to see outside. There was not a lot of decor, although there were a few indentations that I assumed were beds or chairs of some sort. It was very, very different to my treehouse back in the forest where there were no sharp edges and everything was either handmade or came from the living forest. I was certain that these gray boxes were built by humans, even if they did seem artificial. But I had not met a soul in all of my wandering. I started to wonder, had they abandoned all of this? Is Zebra Nation the only habitable place on Earth? I asked this to no one in particular. A voice, not an animal or plant this time, answered. No, there are still many nations on this planet. Opay Nation, Cobra Nation, Aloha Nation. I interrupted the voice. Where are you? Are you in the walls? Why haven't I never heard of these places? The voice laughed. It was an eerie, unnatural laugh. No, I am not in the walls, it said. I am what people call an artificial intelligence. As to why you have not heard of them, that I cannot say. Artificial intelligence? I repeated. That's right, it said. How can I help you? I didn't know what to say at first. It was odd talking to something that I couldn't see or feel. Can you explain more of how you came to be? I asked the AI. The people of this nation, Alpha Nation, built me, it said. They created life? I asked. In a way, although I am just a very complicated machine. Like a very complicated abacus, it said. I knew what an abacus was, but one that could talk was quite incredible. I left Zebra Nation to find out more about the world. Where should I get started? I asked. I cannot tell you where you should get started, the voice said, but you do know that you are now in Alpha Nation. Alpha Nation is the first and greatest of many nations built after the Great Reconstruction. The Great Reconstruction? I asked. That's right. After things fell apart with the Great Fall and with the Great Reconstruction, Alpha Nation was created for people who value technology and progress and independence. I see, I said, although I fully didn't understand. So what exactly are you hoping to find? It asked. I don't know, I said. I just knew that I needed to see the world beyond Zebra Nation to find out what was hidden from us. I don't have Zebra Nation listed in my databank, the voice said. Please ask a question if you don't know what you want to find. It's hard to find, isn't it? It sounds like something the Queen would say. Trying to ruin my confidence, I muttered. What was that? The AI asked. I could not decipher the intent of your words. It was nothing, I lied. Then I thought for a minute. What did I want to find? What did I want to find? Where are all the people? I asked. The people of Alpha Nation are strong and solitary. They have many schools for science and technology, but are not known to be very social. I've been walking for days and haven't come across a single one. Where are they? And how do they live like this? I asked. They are all around. They may be watching you now. They number about 1 million and try to keep their numbers to that amount, so I wouldn't be surprised if someone has been watching you, the AI said. So they have an underground city? I asked. No, they live all around. Many live in Alpha City, but just as many live in the desert that covers the entire nation, and again, they keep to themselves. The solitude makes them tough, the voice said. I walked around the inside of the house. It was seamless and gray. Why does this house exist? I asked. A scientist and engineer, Abraham 23G, who was something of a humanitarian, programmed nanobots to build small housing structures that would provide housing, water, and a place to study for anyone who needed it. There are several thousand houses just like this, the AI said. Wow, so this house has water? I asked. An indentation appeared in the wall and a cup formed, with water filling from the bottom. We can also provide you with food, the voice said. Thank you, I said, taking a sip of the water. Though I must admit I prefer spring water. This water is healthier, perfectly balanced with minerals, no bacteria or pollutants, and the ideal alkaline pH. And there's no need to thank me nor anyone else here, the voice said. Still, I appreciate what you did for me. Thank you, I said, and I took another sip of water as I watched the sunset out the door. You mentioned food? I asked, and from out of the wall a small loaf of sweet-smelling bread appeared. It tasted strange, like glue and wood, but it was good to have something fill my stomach. When it started to get dark, I mentioned to the AI I was tired, and a bed appeared. I sat down, exhausted. Tomorrow is another day, I said quietly to myself. We will find our answers then. And then a voice replied in my head, and maybe you will find that the Queen was right. I sighed. Maybe, I muttered. I liked it more when the noise in my head was animals and plants, because even if they were annoying, they didn't know me so well. I rolled onto my side and I slept soundly all night for the first time in a very long time. No visions, no midnight awakenings, just a solid, restful sleep from dusk to dawn.